There we go. Good afternoon, good morning if you're on the Pacific Coast. Welcome to another Ask Me Anything. Today we will be talking about Air Force Space Force Respite Care. And as always, this is not a DoD program. We are a separate 501c3. We serve military families with information that they need to know and also what we're still learning. Today we are thankfully joined by Austin Carrick. She is the founder and CEO of Exceptional Families at the Military. Austin, do you want to talk about your organization for a minute?
Sure. So thank you for having me on today. I'm really excited to partner with you on respite care because you guys are such a big backbone of the child care community. We are a nonprofit, a 501c3 that serves military families enrolled in the Exceptional Family Member Program or for the Coast Guard, the Special Needs Program. Our entire staff is an all-volunteer staff, so everybody in our staff is not paid, and right now, every staff member also has a loved one enrolled in EFMP or they're enrolled in EFMP themselves. So we are coming at this from a place of understanding and living this road right along with you. We do three main things. We offer support to families. Sometimes that's peer-to-peer support. We serve 15,000 families across our peer-to-peer support groups. We do one-on-one support when peer-to-peer support's just not right. We all know those spouse groups where we get really bad information. We try to make sure that doesn't happen on the EFMP end. We take what we hear from families every year in our support programming, and we do an annual survey. We take the data from the survey and the stories from our families, and then we work on legislative policy and government reform. So much like you're working on respite care now, I'm sure we're going to be working on respite care in the future based off of all the stories families are sharing.
And you are solo parenting right now, right, Austin?
I am. So everybody, if I jump up and I run away, I'm really sorry. My spouse is not home and I am home with the little one who's demanding lots of attention. And that phone call you all just probably heard is because I don't have any heat either. So I may pop on and off. I'm really sorry. I'm still here. I'm listening. I'll get all of the questions. And if you can just bear with me, this is normal EFMP life, as I'm sure many of you understand.
Yes, absolutely. And I really appreciate Austin being here with us today. As she mentioned, they are another organization that really does meet families where they're at. They are down there on the grassroots level, boots on the ground, speaking to families every day, raising their stories, and really trying to help them navigate these programs that we found to be really difficult to understand when you're a family, especially if you're a family who has to focus on keeping your children alive and thriving. You don't really have the bandwidth to dive into things like this. So I'm really grateful for her organization, all of her volunteers, and really the work that we're doing. So Austin, if you wouldn't mind, can you tell us a little bit about what is respite care?
So respite care is provided to families so that they can get a break. And before you all attack me, I know there are problems. We're going to go over that, but respite care is supposed to be there to provide care for families so that they can have a break from the demands of caring for their loved one that's an EFMP. It's supposed to be free for families so that you can have a few minutes, a few hours to yourself. I know a lot of you don't use it for downtime. You use it because you have to be pragmatic, but the purpose is really so that you can have some time to refresh, have a bath. I know none of us do it, but that's what they tell us every time they tell us about it. And you get this through registering for EFMP. So you have to be registered at EFMP at the medical, and then you would go to your local community service office. I know they just changed the name of it, so I'm not going to say it so I don't get butchered, but you go to your community service office, you talk to them there, you'll do a level of needs rubric, and you hope that you get respite care. And we're talking about this because we're hearing a lot of people with a lot of concerns across all the branches. Today, we're obviously here for the Space Force and the Air Force. There are a lot of things changing. A lot of people who were receiving care before are no longer receiving care. If you were getting sibling care, that sibling care is going away. And there are a lot of changes, including deadlines that need to be met in order to continue to try to receive respite care.
Yeah, and to that point, we've seen a lot of change, and Austin has been really instrumental in helping us understand where did this change come from? What is happening right now?
Yeah, so the change is coming because 2020 there was a hearing on EFMP, and one of the requests that was made was to standardize EFMP across the branches. I can tell you that when Michelle and I testified together and we asked for standardization, this is not what we meant. We meant that we should be able to go to an Air Force base if you're an Army family, or an Army family, an Air Force family, go to an Army base, and that's who tells you if there's care available, as opposed to the nearest base. But what has occurred is a process that's supposed to create a standardization across all the branches for all things EFMP. And of course, where do they start? The part that's going to hurt us the most, unfortunately, which is respite care. And so that's how we ended up where we are now. Funding, as you see on here, it's really complicated, you guys, but the reality is the funding is coming from your branches, with a very small amount coming from an overall budget that's paying for the buildings and things that are really not what you see with respite care, but it's your EFMP employees, that sort of thing. There is a new contract coming out for Child Care Aware of America for our Air Force families. You're going to be switching things over. It's going to be a lot different. And I know I don't know everything on that. I know, Kayla, you have a little bit more information, but there are a lot of changes.
Yeah, and if you want links to view the article that was written up about when Austin and Michelle Norman from Partners in Promise did go testify, that is part of this slide deck. And then also linked here is policy, which is also, all of this will be made public. You'll be able to have those links afterwards so that you can kind of get everything into one location. And then let's go over here to Austin. What do our families need to know as we're navigating this change?
Yeah, new policy, right? You cannot exceed 32 hours. What we're hearing from all of you, we know this is really hard. There's no sibling care. There's no transportation. And I know that families are like, I don't know what to do with the other children. There's no sibling care. We understand. And what has happened is they're standardizing to the lowest common denominator, and you are the only branch that was receiving sibling care. So unfortunately, that is gone. You're now going to have what Kayla is going to recommend, I'm sure many more times throughout this, is 3 points of contact. So you may only have one person saying, yo, you can just contact me, I'll take care of everything. As with IEPs, you CC everybody and anybody, so that nobody can say you didn't do it, nobody knew, you have other people. And it's also a really great way to pressure people, because if they know other people are seeing it, then they're more likely to do what they're supposed to do. And you're now going to have 3 recertification and eligibility dates, and they are not going to line up because they never do. So you can see that one is every 3 years, one is every year, and one is twice a year. So this is going to be kind of messy and probably hard.
Yes. And I really want to foot stomp that. Messy and hard. So if you are struggling, if you are confused, if you don't understand what's happening right now, it is valid. It is accurate. Don't let anybody try to tell you that this is easier than what you're making it out to be, because this is going to be difficult. But the reality is you do have support systems for this. I mean, you have Austin's organization, you have my organization. I'm sure that you have local networks, and we're going to do what we can collaboratively to make this as smooth of a process for you guys as possible. And to Austin's point, families have questions.
They do. So we've heard a lot of rumblings, right? Now, okay, I have other kids at home. Can my respite care provider provide additional hours outside of my respite care services? What do I do? And I wish we had great answers for you, but the answers that are coming back have been really conflicted. So can they still offer care outside the EFMP respite program? Maybe. We're not sure. We're going to see. It's a little blurry. There are some parts that are telling us they can, some parts that are saying they can't. So we're not sure. As far as watching other children, again, it's not been clear. We're not seeing any official policies coming out, but we are hearing rumblings from families at EFM, at least, that they're being told that they cannot watch other children and that the other children can't be in the home. I cannot tell you that is 100% the truth. I'm just telling you what we're hearing from families, so that you can prepare yourself, because if you're asking for respite care and they say that you can't have your other children in the home, then the question becomes, what are your other children going to be doing? Where are they going to be going? And the same thing, if they can't offer those extra hours, what's going to happen? How are you going to be able to continue living life kind of like you have, which we know is like barely swimming, but you need to be aware of the changes that are coming.
Yeah, and Austin Exceptional Families in the Military has a far greater grasp on the EFM world. So they talk to EFM families more often than me or my organization does. Respite care is not something that we historically really cover. It is something that we assist families with understanding the basic knowledge of, and that's just because it does get confusing sometimes between what are the child care programs, what are the respite care programs. And so we've folded a bit in some resources in, but it's by no means our expertise here. And so when we were examining this, we examined agreements. We were looking at agreements. We had families and providers from states all across the country send in what their updated agreements are so that we could kind of parse through and see how are they the same, how are they different as part of the standardization. And we don't know. So the provider agreements really state that the providers cannot request additional compensation from the families for respite care. It says for respite care. But the family agreement at the same time also states that a family who exceeds their respite care hours, in addition to a penalty like a suspension, they must compensate for those additional hours to that provider or they'll be kicked out of the program. So we know money can be exchanged. What we don't understand yet is where are those hard lines? It doesn't expressly state in any of these agreements right now that the provider cannot accept payment directly for work outside of respite care. So like if you wanted to hire your respite provider to do some sitting outside of EFMP respite, but you do need to understand that liability insurance does not cover them at that point. So I think that as Austin speaks with more families, as we continue reviewing additional agreements, we'll have a better idea of what this looks like. And so are you taking this one or am I taking this one?
Yeah, I can. I just couldn't find mute on my unmute, you guys. I'm sorry. So what do you have to do? I think the most important thing probably of everything we share with you today is this slide, because your deadline is January 31st to get your application in, if you're a family, if you're a provider, to make sure that you're approved when all of this goes into place. So you don't have a lot of time. We know the inauguration's on Monday, that's the 20th. You literally have 11 days from Monday to get this taken care of and turned in. So please, please, please put it on your priority list. We know that you're already drowning in all of the paperwork for all of the doctors and all of the schools and all of the things, but if you don't get it in time, then you are not necessarily going to have approval on time on the other side. You'll see that there's another deadline. Remember, there's all these deadlines and then all these recertification periods after the deadlines. Existing and new family provider documents have to be submitted and processed from February 1st to the 30th, and then the 15th of February to the 25th of February, families and providers should get your certificates that everything is submitted and we've got it. So what do you do if you don't receive it? That's a hard question. I know that's the number one question we're going to get, but what happens when the 31st comes around?
Yes. And that is where our process as an organization has been very successful. That's where this accountability piece comes in. And that's why we say you keep everyone at that table, everyone on those email threads. If you currently have a provider, and I'll kind of dig into what the provider side looks like right now. So if you are able to maintain eligibility through this process, you are the one who's going to have to create the accountability. You are going to have to do the follow-ups. You are more than welcome to, for the sake of this process, we will be taking people in through case management to help them track their case, help them find those points of contact if they are getting stuck. But you have to create the accountability and transparency on your side and keeping everyone on these email chains. When you send in the documents, when you send in the follow-up questions, keeping your provider with you. And we'll kind of dive into that a little bit as well. First, I do want to talk for a minute about the provider side, because this is a huge piece. In childcare, we have been really hammering that we have a lack of providers. We keep building new buildings, we keep setting up new centers, and what we come back to is a foundational issue of we don't have enough providers to fill what the current need is. And so we want to maintain providers where we can through these processes and maybe taking a little bit of that administrative burden off their shoulders. And so in addition to searching through, these family agreements, we also started looking through our provider agreements. What are providers having to sign up for? How does that differ from state to state? One major thing, which I'll talk about a little bit more later, is that if you are in the state of California, you and you are a current provider who wants to continue offering care, you have to become an employee of Respite Care of America, LLC. So it's not Child Care Aware of America. It's a for-profit subsidiary of theirs, and you have to become an employee there first in order to be able to transition over and offer that care. So part of this is you are not guaranteed employment. So just because you have already done it and you do all of your documents and you turn them in, they do not have to offer you that position in order to continue offering care to that family. We are hoping that we have 100% transition rate, but we don't know yet. So you will be applying for employment there. In every other state, it does not seem like you will be doing that. It seems like instead you'll be working with a local partner agency who will likely have their own requirements, restrictions that providers have to agree to under this contract. So it's still all under Child Care Aware being that administrator. But in California, you're also then answering to Respite Care of America. And in every other state, you're going to be operating with everyone above and a local partner agency. The request for the security check and the documents, we're going to go over in just a minute. This piece is likely going to take you some time, and you guys have the same exact deadline that the families do. So the 31st, if you want to be able to maintain that transition of care. And as we've already said, no sibling care. We were getting quotes, stories from providers and families into our inbox, and this is the piece that is really driving a lot of the providers to say, I don't know if I even want to do this anymore. You know, it used to be that they could be covered for the FM, but also the sibling. And so that made it worth their time. I mean, it's valuable. They're learning skills. They are dedicating this to the families. And so the removal of that sibling care now means lower rates for them. And lower rates means, is this really worth the hassle of doing all of this administrative work now for these few hours of lower pay care? And so you need to know that the sibling care, those rates, those are no longer part of this. So provider frequently asked questions. Providers, you do have, these are questions that came in through our inbox. There is an in-service training requirement. You have to do everything that is required as part of the original. And then you also have in-service training. So 4 hours in the first year, 8 hours every subsequent year. We don't know if this is paid. The agreement only references 8 hours paid for the CPR first aid when you're renewing your certification. It does not say anything about the other hours of required training being compensated. As far as withholding taxes, great question. I'm not a CPA, nor do I pretend to be one. But I do see that being a tricky place, especially because some states you will become an employee, other states you are an independent contractor, then you have local partner agencies involved as well. So what does this actually look like for you tax-wise? As we find out more information, we'll push that out, but it's likely that it's going to be highly subjective based on the area that you are currently living in and how that agreement is really worked out. And the last one is the guaranteed hours. I mean, you're not guaranteed hours. So families do have to sign up for slots with you. And what happens essentially is that if the family does not cancel within 24 hours, then you can be reimbursed for some of those hours missed. It does cap at 4 hours. So if you were scheduled for 6 hours and then they cancel, you do physically still have to go to be canceled. And then you will only be reimbursed for up to 4 of those hours. The family, however, will lose all 6 of those hours. So just for the record there's no guaranteed hours. The reimbursement does cap, and you do have to show up to get that reimbursement. Even if it was canceled, you still got to drive out there. So what do providers have to do? We are going to have some guides on this that are going to be live on our website after this for you to download and kind of take a look at. The one thing that I want everyone to really focus in on is requesting your cleared background checks. So in your email that you got, if you're a current provider, then you have background checks that are available. You need to request those from the DoD. There is a link there. It says you can request them by mailing, or you can request them by clicking this link. When you click the link, it just takes you to a list of addresses. So we pulled down which one you need to utilize. And so that's going to be on our Respite Care site. It also has an email address and a phone number that you can access to request all of those background checks. Of course, your CPR certification, any current trainings. They are going to be using those licenses, training certificates to determine your compensation rate. So your pay rate, it is going to be based on your qualifications. And if you don't submit anything, then they may just start you at that introductory level. We don't know what that looks like yet. If you are in California, as I mentioned earlier, you also need to apply to become an employee. So in addition to all of the documents that everyone else needs to do and sign and submit, we also have these additional employment-based documents that also must be submitted as part of this. And let me just move over to the next one real quick. So provider slide, these are all available afterwards. Because the process for the families is something that Austin talked about. We have a deadline. These are the email addresses that I want you to use. These are the ones that you need to copy every single time. And you may be getting told, oh, you don't really need that one anymore, or you can just contact this person. No, you add to, you never take away. We want to maintain communication in writing as much as possible. And if you're in doubt about whether someone should be added, just add them. We all get email. It's fine. Add them into your email communications. Keep them in your communications. And as you're navigating this, both as a provider and as a family, remember, this is a DoD program. It is administered by a third-party agency. And this is something we have in the childcare side all the time. It is a DoD program. There is someone at the DoD responsible for the management of these contracts. So do not get stuck at that first barrier and think, oh, well, I guess there's nothing we can do. Because there is someone at the DoD level whose responsibility is to ensure that you get access to these if you qualify. So that process, emailing those documents in, you're going to see the exact same emails here on this one. If you're working with a family currently, copy them in your emails. Show them that you're sending them in. We want to prevent runaround as much as possible. This is the email address, the phone number. They gave you a little bit in your email. You got a little snippet where you kind of got just this mailing address piece here. So this is all of that information. This is the link that will take you there, and it will be published for you all. If you are outside of California and you're an independent contractor, you need to know there may be additional steps put forth for you from your local partner agency. So that means you may get all of this done by the 31st, and then there's something else to do. And if that's the case, document. Email, document. Say, okay, thank you so much, XYZ, for letting me know there are these additional steps I need to take. I have done all of these things that were listed as required. I will now start on these. Let's keep everything in writing as much as humanly possible. Austin, tell them about our breakdown here.
Yeah, so, Kayla was just telling everybody, look at these emails, make sure we have everybody emailed. And so it's really important when you're having contact with everybody and you're having different conversations. If you have a phone conversation, follow up via email, include all of these people. You're going to include your Air Force Respite Care contract manager, Child Care of America, and then your local partner agency, or if you're in California, the LLC. You can also add your installation EF&P coordinator. This is your proof of all of the things you're doing. And so this is the same rules we have for IEPs. I have a conversation, someone makes a promise, somebody tells me by the 25th, I'm going to have this done. I follow up via email and say, our conversation today, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. This is my understanding of our conversation, because unless they respond to you, I didn't say that. That is your proof that the conversation happened. And that is just going to be one more thing added to, your stack of paperwork for your application and your ongoing recertifications.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, so these were questions that I did submit as part of this a couple of weeks ago. I did get a response recently that just said, because the transition has not actually happened to Child Care of America yet, all of these questions need to go to the branches instead of to them directly. So if you are a family, one of the questions that we had was, since a respite provider can be a home provider, including a child care center or a family child care home, will the respite provider only care for the respite child at that time due to the issues of non-EF&P children being watched? So part of this is that you can put your respite child into an FCC or a center, but do the same limitations then apply where no other children can be cared for at that moment if it's under the EF&P program? We don't have that answer. We do not have an answer on whether or not their providers in other states outside of California will also need to become employees of Respite Care LLC. I don't think so from what I'm seeing, but we don't know. I can't say that for certainty in all 50 states. And on the provider side, it was just a strangely worded question on the agreements that the providers have to sign. Have you ever been employed in any facility, Child Care Aware of America? I don't know if it's, by Child Care Aware of America in any facility, or maybe Child Care Aware of America owns facilities. I don't actually know what that means yet. But that is a question that's on there. So just something to be cognizant of. And then I want to take a minute here to see if there were any questions that came in from any platform. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I know this is a lot of information. Okay, I don't see any right now, so we'll just wrap into our final thoughts. Of course, if there are questions that come in, you have questions afterwards, these are our contacts. You can also, email them if you don't want to be public. So if you don't want to post it on Facebook, that's fine. If you are comfortable posting, we'll have this on Facebook, YouTube. We do check those. We go back and answer them after the fact. So you can always just drop them in the comments. We know most people do not watch this live. So Austin, I'm going to turn it over to you then for some final thoughts. And I have this wonderful slide you made.
Yeah, so we know there are a lot of changes happening, and I want to be really clear that what we're hearing from all of the branches is, am I going to qualify? And we've heard that if you're a level of needs 3 or 4, you'll qualify. What does that mean? We don't know. At EFM, we have submitted several FOIA requests for the level of needs rubric. The military has been hard fast that they cannot release it, that it's proprietary. There's a lot of other reasons and excuses on why we can't have it. But it means that it makes it very hard for us to know or understand who's going to qualify, how they're going to qualify, and why they qualify over someone who doesn't, or why they did before and they don't know. What we do know, and this is a little nerdy with me, so just stick with me because there's math and numbers, but I'm getting somewhere, I promise. The Army's child care contract for the new respite care program using this new level of needs rubric is out right now. And what they're saying when they're asking people to become their Child Care Aware of America is that there are 56,000 EFMP enrolled families in the Army, and that only that 0.625% of people will qualify for the Army respite care. So that leaves us to about 350 individuals out of the 56,000 people in the Army enrolled in EFMP that'll qualify. If we use that same data and roll it across to the Air Force based off of what we know the numbers in the Air Force are and the approximations of the data they've given us before, that leaves us that there's approximately 30,000 families that are Air Force and 3,500 that are Space Force that are enrolled in EFMP. These numbers are not exact because the last numbers we could pull were from 2020, but they are a very close representation based off of more recent DoD numbers and the statistics across the force. And I'm not going to go into the deep end of that. But that means that our educated guess is that there's only going to be about 210 people from the Space Force and Air Force combined that'll qualify. That does not leave many families seeking respite care. So while you're doing these applications, it's really, really important for your family's sake that you're also trying to find any other community resource that you can. We want you to also look at TRICARE Echo Respite. It is not as many hours. We know it's very difficult to get. I am not saying it's easy, but at this point, if we're looking at only 210 families, there are a lot of you who are not going to be receiving respite care under the new contract. So you still need to do your application because we don't know what the qualification is to be an EFMP respite family under the new contract with the level of needs rubric. So please fill that out, complete it so that they also know that these needs still exist. But look in your communities. If you haven't applied for Medicaid, please apply for a Medicaid waiver because oftentimes you can get respite through there. Medicaid waivers are not based off of your income. The waiver portion is waiving your income. If you have questions on how to apply or you're unsure, please reach out to us. I will help you personally figure out, every single one of you that reach out, which Medicaid waiver to apply for. Some states are harder than others, but many states have respite care under that waiver program. And then if you are on ECHO, please be reaching out to your primary care provider and asking for a referral for respite care through ECHO. It is only a handful of hours a month, but if you get nothing in this new level of needs rubric, 16 hours, which is the current number, is far more than 0. And we did have an NDAA change 3 to 4 years ago that increases that number to 30 hours a month. So if you just hold tight, maybe soon that change will finally be implemented and that will help some. We know that it's very difficult to access all of the things I just gave you, but we want you to have other places to look for assistance.
I agree. And kind of to Austin's point earlier, we know that a lot of you are not using this for your bubble bath, right? You've had to use it because you don't have other options available for your children. There's just nothing. And so it does become your childcare in a lot of ways. It's how you make your family makes ends meet, given the mission demands and the demands of just being an EF&P family. And so part of that is there are organizations, the community organizations. I'm not saying they're everywhere. I'm not saying they're going to fit perfectly. I'm not saying they're going to come to your home. I'm saying that if you were using the respite care for childcare and you now want access to childcare, tell me about it. I want to know about it. Whether I can do something about it in that immediate moment or not, I can't promise that because you all have very different levels of need. But the more noise we make about this gap in care, the more likely we are to see resources. And so I wanted to leave you guys here with some quotes. These came directly from my inbox when I started asking families, what does this transition look like to you? So these are all Air Force, Space Force families. And these are both from providers and from families. And we've learned that it just extends beyond what respite care is. Some people, especially installations that didn't have FCCs, or maybe you were geographically isolated, your respite provider did other things for you. They provided deployment care. They provided PCS care. You had additional care wrapped into this from this one provider that they can no longer do. They're being told, no, you can no longer provide this because you are a respite provider and this is the only type of care you can offer. And it's leaving these families with zero options. And so I want you to know that we hear you. We understand that a level of need rubric that we can't view does not determine whether or not you are in need of a break, whether or not this is hard, whether or not you deserve support, because you do. And so I want you to know that. I want you to understand that we're all on the same page here. We're all on the same team. What we would like to do is keep gathering data, keep getting answers, and keep collecting your stories, because data says something, but your data and a story is a whole different ballgame. Like that is how we really drive change and create impact. So please continue reaching out. As I said, I will have this available on our website. We're working on continuing to build out our respite, which is just a snapshot of what the requirements are. We'll link things. We link to exceptional families in the military in there. We link to Military One Source. We link to Partners in Promise. Any of the resources we've come across that we think might help, we'll link into there. So bear with us, work with us as we try to find a better path forward for everybody here. Thank you so much, Austin, for joining us here today and for sharing all your knowledge. And I look forward to having you back as we go through our other branches.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll see a couple of you in a few weeks.
Yes. All right. I will talk to you all soon. Take care.